Bizarre punishments in 7 ancient empires you will not believe. Human history is littered with tales that terrify, confound, and fascinate us in equal measure. Among these, one of the darkest chapters lies in the punishments devised by ancient civilizations, methods of control so bizarre and cruel that they seem ripped from horrific tales of fiction. Yet, they were real. They were carried out not just for justice, but to instill fear, command obedience, and showcase power in ways both creative and horrifying. Viewer discretion is advised, because what you're about to witness is not for the faint of heart. Before we dive into the spine-chilling specifics, let's take a moment to understand why such cruel punishments existed in the first place. Ancient societies functioned with strict codes of law, and punishment was not just about maintaining order. It was also about sending a clear, visceral message. Fear of pain, humiliation, or even death kept people in line. For many ancient cultures, punishment was more than practical. It was symbolic. It reflected their belief systems, their views on morality, and their God's will. These punishments weren't merely justice. They were often spectacles, witnessed by large crowds, making them theatrical warnings of what happens when you cross the line. Now, with that in mind, let's explore the first of these horrifying practices, an execution method so unimaginable that it defies logic. Persian civilization is remembered for its advanced governance and monumental achievements, but beneath its polished veneer lurked a punishment devised for the most hated criminals, scaphism. The process began innocently enough. The condemned individual was tied between 2 hollowed-out wooden boats, leaving their head and limbs exposed. But this is where the nightmare began. Executors would force the victim to consume excessive amounts of milk and honey, coating their exposed skin with the sticky mixture. At first, this might seem oddly merciful. However, this combination acted as bait, attracting swarms of insects. Over time, those insects feasted on the living flesh as the victim lay helpless, baking under the sun. They were slowly devoured over days, sometimes weeks, while enduring an existence filled with excruciating agony and unrelenting horror. The purpose? To ensure the punishment was as prolonged and terrifying as possible, an unforgettable warning to anyone who dared defy Persia's absolute power. Rome, a sophisticated empire where grand architecture and military innovations flourished, also had a darker side. Justice in ancient Rome could be brutal, but one particularly eerie punishment was known as being walled alive. Reserved for offenses considered sacrilegious, such as breaking vows of chastity or defiling sacred spaces, this punishment involved sealing individuals within walls, entombing them while they were still alive, and leaving them to slowly perish in claustrophobic despair. The practice wasn't born of violence alone. There was a chilling religious symbolism behind it. Romans believed some impurities needed to be physically removed from society without spilling blood. The offender suffered invisibly, out of sight, with their last breaths echoing within stone chambers, an eerie silence meant to erase sins from both mortal and divine perspectives. Imagine staring at brick after brick as it encloses you, and the last sliver of light fades away, a suffocating blend of fear and inevitability. If you think the Romans were cruel, the Greeks also devised something shocking in its creativity and horror: the brazen bull. Invented by an artisan named Persius, the brazen bull was supposedly a gift to Phalaris, the tyrannical ruler of Akragas. This grotesque device was shaped like a hollow bronze bull, large enough to fit a person inside. Once the victim was sealed within, a fire was lit beneath it and the metal began to heat up. Slowly, the person trapped inside would be roasted alive. But what made this instrument especially horrifying were its acoustics. Sadly for Persius, this grim innovation became his own undoing. Legend has it that Phalaris, in a darkly ironic twist, tested the device on its inventor. The Babylonians are celebrated for creating one of the world's first legal codes, the Code of Hammurabi. But while this law code may appear like an early form of justice, it was anything but merciful. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth was more than just a saying here. It was a way of life. Under Hammurabi's rule, punishments were unapologetically brutal. A builder constructing a faulty house that collapsed and killed someone might find themselves executed. A surgeon whose failed operation resulted in a death might have their hands cut off. Even minor theft could result in mutilation or drowning. For the Babylonians, justice wasn't just about fairness, it was about balance, but their strict adherence to this principle often came at horrifying human costs. Few punishments compare to the sheer agony and psychological terror of lynching, often called the death by 1,000 cuts. Practiced for over a millennium in ancient China, lynching was reserved for the most heinous crimes, such as treason or patricide. The process involved systematically slicing off small parts of the victim's body while leaving them alive for as long as possible. Each cut was deliberate, slow, and agonizing, adding a sinister theatricality to the punishment. Often witnessed by crowds, the spectacle imposed not only physical suffering but also emotional ruin, ensuring the victim died in shame, stripped of their dignity. Even after death, the horror lingered, as the Chinese believed this punishment fragmented the victim's body and soul, barring them from reaching any kind of afterlife. The Vikings are often romanticized for their seafaring expertise and warrior culture, but behind the legends lies practices so barbaric that they blur the line between myth and historical fact. Among these is the infamous blood eagle punishment. The blood eagle was reportedly reserved for traitors or those who committed grave betrayals. The victim's back would be sliced open, and their ribs were broken outward, creating a shape resembling wings. To complete the macabre ritual, the Vikings might pull out the victim's lungs so they appeared to flutter as the person struggled for breath, a ghastly mockery of freedom in their final moments. Some historians debate whether the blood eagle was ever truly practiced or merely embellished by later storytellers. Either way, this tale endures as one of the most haunting in Viking lore. No discussion of ancient punishments can ignore the Aztecs, who blended religious devotion with terrifying rituals. Sacrifice in their society wasn't simply a punishment, it was a sacred offering to appease their gods, like Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun. But these weren't simple executions, they were orchestrated events for public witnessing. Victims, often prisoners of war, were led atop tall pyramids, where their still-beating hearts were cut out in a gruesome spectacle. The bodies were then sometimes dismembered or thrown down the temple steps. To the Aztecs, these sacrifices ensured cosmic balance and societal order. To us, they're a painful reminder of the extremes that belief, power, and fear can reach. These punishments from ancient empires, crafted with meticulous cruelty and symbolic purpose, offer chilling insights into the darker side of human history. They tell us how far societies would go to enforce order and command loyalty. They reveal a world where fear wasn't just an emotion, but a tool, wielded ruthlessly in the name of justice, religion, and power. Thankfully, these barbaric practices are now confined to history's pages, but their echoes remind us of humanity's capacity for both ingenuity and terror. So, the next time you hear about the complexities of law and punishment, pause and consider. What price did ancient societies pay to uphold their idea of order? Thank you for exploring these eerie corners of history with us. If this journey intrigued or unnerved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more episodes uncovering history's most haunting tales. Until next time, stay curious and be thankful that you live in the modern era.